An op-ed in a local paper in Massachusetts a couple weeks ago talking about handlers, and a lot of times when I'm asked to stay away from a certain topic, the principal, the person you're interviewing, number one, is not even aware that the interviewers are being asked to stay away from that.
That's true.
And number two, sometimes I'll make the call and I'll say, they've never been on my show. Worst comes to worst, they'll never come on again. I'm just going to go there anyway. How many times have you had to make that call?
A lot.
And what do you usually do?
Well,
or is it really one-on-one? You got to handle it case by case.
Case by case. And look, it's enormously important for our show, as the ethos of our show, that we don't sell out for access, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody says, "Here, ask me this question," or otherwise I won't come on, we're not going to agree to that deal because that's not what we do. Right?
Will you announce this person was going to come on, but they insisted on knowing the questions, so we said no?
Again, depends on the context, but from time to time, we've definitely done that.
Yeah.
Or if someone bails out on an interview because they found out we were actually going to ask them questions.
That's happened too.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I might call them out on air on that. And to give you a rough example, Lou Dobbs was on the show, and his handler had, said all these different things, but I think exactly like you said, I don't think Lou knew that. And then so I'm asking him questions, and the PR person got on the line in the middle of the interview. Okay. And I'm like, are you crazy? We're on air, right? And then Lou Dobbs got mad, and he's like, no, of course I'm going to answer the question, and shooed them away.
So it's not uncommon that the interviewee is actually much more open to talking about stuff than their handler.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look, they're a little bit more on the spot, and even if they had told their handler earlier, if they're on air, they're more on the spot, to be honest. But I think in general, my experience is that they're earnestly more willing to answer questions than their PR people want them to.
I've heard you talking on your show and also in some of the interviews you've done here about reaching out to the right-wingers, that eventually they'll come over to our side, so on and so forth. And when I hear that, I can only think to myself that it's like when Shirley Phelps Roper tells me that eventually the Jews will accept Jesus, and then they will. I won't go to hell, and all the others won't go to hell. I mean, it's a little hopeless, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
It's not that bad.
Okay, but you have to be very specific about it. Okay?
Yeah.
If you're hoping that you're going to get pro-life people to go, hey, you know what? I didn't really consider about a woman's liberty, and that she should maybe control her own body.
I'm going to change my mind.
Right. That's tough. It can happen,
yeah.
And it can happen case by case. But that's, in mass, is a little tough, right? But I'm asking for something very specific, saying, hey, look, I know you don't like your politicians being bought, and I don't like it either, right? And I'm not saying you should agree with liberal positions or progressive positions. I want to have a real fair ideological battle with you. But right now we're not having that. What we're having instead is our politicians don't serve either one of us. They serve the corporate interests that have bought them. Can I eventually get a decent percentage of right-wingers to understand that and to join that fight? I think absolutely.
You can, but there's going to be resistance if it's coming from someone on the left, right? Just on principle. At least that's what I've bumped into.
Oh, of course. They're going to distrust you, et cetera. But that's normal. I mean, if Sean Hannity came with a wonderful idea, we'd be concerned
Liberals
too.
are going
right.
to be hesitant. They're going to be thinking, what's going on underneath this that is causing that? Yeah.
Exactly. But hopefully, if you do it for long enough and you explain it to them very, very clearly. And look, if Hannity came with an idea, he's not wrong 100% of the time. Broken clocks, right? Twice a day, as they say.
At least.
So I'd hear him out. And certain percentage will hear us out, and certain percentage won't. And I'll get the people who will, because I am on their side. I don't want their politicians bought by corporate interests and controlled by Washington and Wall Street.
Sure.
I want to have an honest debate.
When you think about the Tea Party, I know that you get into a lot of rants about the Tea Party. I get into a lot of rants about the Tea Party. I think that the Tea Party, the better the Tea Party does, the more it will help progressive candidates, because they're taking away 8-1 or 9-1 Republican votes before they, compared to liberal votes. But that narrative, I'm not hearing it that much. Is there just something wrong about the narrative, or is there some reason that nobody's talking about it?
Well, look, there's an upside and a downside to it. The upside, obviously, is if they enter into an election, into a general election,
right,
they've done great damage to Republicans, right? Because they're going to siphon away votes.
Yeah.
The Democrats going to win. Probably best example is 23rd District in New York, where they lost a seat that had been held since the 1870s.
Yeah.
So it's a losing short-term strategy, no question about that, especially if they go into general elections. But Or even in primaries is probably a losing strategy because they're going to get a person who's more right wing, right, and less able to appeal to centrists
once they get to the general
election.
Right.
Generally speaking, although I think a lot of people, like in Utah, for example, will think, hey, you know what, this guy's more honest than the old guy Bob Bennett, who was a total sellout, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a mixed bag, but here's what I'm concerned about and why I think a lot of people are concerned about the Tea Party movement. They're pushing the Overton window to the right, okay? Overton window, for those that don't know, is where you are in the spectrum and it moves. That window moves within the spectrum. Cheney and Bush pushed that window all the way to the right. Obama has barely pushed it an inch back, right? So that's one of the reasons we're disgruntled with Obama. As he's doing that, the Tea Party guys keep pushing that window further and further to the right. So now Obama, who I think is a center-right politician, not even a center-left politician.
Absolutely.
Okay, if your window is between Obama, who's center-right, and the Tea Parties, who are insane right, well, that's a terrible window. And you see how the Tea Parties have helped the right-wingers move the window in their direction.
Midweek Politics is brought to you in part by Jackson & Connor, classically modern men's apparel in Northampton, Massachusetts, on the second floor of Thorne's Marketplace. By DIF Design, specializing in custom business websites at difdesign.com. And by shentrition.com, provider of all-natural superfood and adaptogenic herbal blend at shentrition.com. To find out more about underwriting Midweek Politics, visit midweekpolitics.com.